Hello everyone, and welcome to the inaugural debut of Wellness Wheel Wednesday. I am here today with Life Mastery Coach Stacey Berger, which I will introduce you to in just a moment, and we are going to be talking about health and wellness and emotional stress, and some tips that one could employ to begin to reduce some of those mental emotional stresses. Now, why is that important? Well, as a chiropractor with 15 years experience, I understand how the body actually creates some of those aches and pains. And most people always over-attribute that they've done something physical. They've slept wrong, they sat wrong, they stood wrong, and all of a sudden it has their pain. And that certainly becomes important, but it's not always the case. There are chemical factors that affect the way that we present in the body. And from my experience, emotional stresses really have a large impact on those aches and pains that people present with. When we do have stresses, it really impacts the way that the body and mind are talking to each other, and that's why the aches and pains result. So from a chiropractic perspective, when we have lots of these emotional stresses, we get these postural faults, as you can just imagine that all happening there. We get these postural faults, and it's my job to help correct some of those so that you begin to feel better. But it's also your job to look at what's causing some of those emotional stresses. There's the way that we feel about ourselves physically could be contributing. Are we living up to our mental potential? Are we becoming complacent? Is our financial health there? Are we worried about our debt? Family life, social life. But today, I'm here with Stacey Berger, and she is going to be talking about our spiritual or purpose. Sometimes when we walk around in life and we feel that we don't have a purpose, or that we're doing something and it's not what we're supposed to be doing, or that feeling, I know that a lot of people can relate to that, it really can create a lot of emotional duress. Having been there, I know what it's like to kind of lack a direction or lack a purpose. So thankfully, Stacey is here to kind of help us figure out how to get a purpose or create a purpose or work with what we have so that we can work towards creating a more significant purpose so that we begin to feel better about ourselves and our lives. So come with me over here as I introduce one of my favorite people on the planet these days is Life Mastery Coach Stacey Berger. Stacey, thank you, and welcome to my office, Advanced Wellness Chiropractic. And I'm sure you are familiar with a lot of people having, at least in the beginning phases, when they're speaking to you, they're just sad, sometimes hurt, and very frustrated if their life is just not really manifesting the results. So is that often what happens to you when somebody gives you a call, or how do you help them figure this out, these emotions, and what do you do with them?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about as far as the wellness wheel is so important because, like you say, sometimes where that pain, the emotional and the chemical, it expresses itself in the physical, but it has started long before it ever shows up in the body. And so when we manage both of those, it really does lead to vibrant living. So a lot of times when people call me, they're feeling stuck. They're feeling lost. They're starting to wonder, is there more to life than this? And it's how do I discover what that is? And so a great place to start, if that sounds like you, if that describes you, maybe wondering, you've had success in certain areas, but wondering, is there more to life than this? And looking for what that purpose is, and how do I discover that? And a couple of things that are really important. Do you want some tools? Yeah, let's dive right into that. The first place to start is to recognize that life has two growth signals. And those two growth signals are longings and our discontents. So it's the desire for something more, to achieve something we haven't achieved before. And then it's also our discontent, when we're not happy, when we're starting to feel like we're struggling. I think when we can recognize that that's just life wanting us to do more, be more, have more, we can be kinder to ourselves, saying, okay, this is just feedback letting me know there's more life here for me. So longings and discontents are two sources of feedback. I love to ask the question, what would I love? What would I love? And that can be tough. Most of us have not been trained to ask that question in our life. We're doing things maybe that we thought we should be doing. Our parents told us we should be doing. We thought, oh, that would be a good career track. And so we find ourselves sometimes waking up inside of a life and going, this isn't what I wanted. And so how do you discover what it is that you do want? So here's a few tricks just to start that self-discovery process. One is to think about times when you are most happy. So what are you staying up late searching on the internet? What books are you reading? What conversations are you in that absolutely light you up? So where do you get that sense of excitement, that joy? And think of the times recently where that happens for you, but also from your past. When you were working in a job or doing a hobby, when were you most happy? What were you doing in those times? And start to think about what's the commonalities.
With people that it's where they spend their money, so it's really what you value. So you'd spend money on things that make you happy, and not spend on money on things that aren't important to you, as well as how you feel your space. So things, it's pictures, what are in the pictures, these kinds of things. So yeah. Agreed. Anything,
come really easily to us. We just think, well, everybody can do that. And that's not necessarily the case. So asking other people for that feedback. What do you see that I'm really good at? And then maybe, just maybe, there's a dream that you've put on the shelf somewhere where you always thought you would do that. You'd write the book. You would go on that trip. And for some reason it got put on a shelf because you didn't know how it was going to happen, or somebody told you it wasn't a good idea. And start to, go through that inventory, and are there some things that you always thought you wanted to do that you aren't doing?
Since working with you, I've posed the question to some of my friends and family as to what would you love, and I often found that they had tremendous difficulty now going through what you just suggested by looking at your environment. How do you spend your time, your money? What do you talk about? All these things, and yet people are still having trouble answering the question, what do I love? So I think what I want to ask you is it okay to change your mind? But it's almost important to just decide on something and then work towards it, and maybe it'll change or evolve. Or how do you answer that?
Great question. For most of us, we have not been asked the question, what would you love, ever before. And for many of us, we're told to be practical, to be realistic. And so when we have this idea of I can dream, I can do anything I want, that's not a very comfortable place for most people. And so just by starting to ask the question, what would I love, it starts to open up and expand the imagination. And if you can just move through your day and be asking yourself that question, and just notice what gives you that spark, what gets you excited, and it wakes up the imagination. What I love what you just said is it's important to start. I have many clients who we go through a process of writing down their vision, and they feel excited about it, but a few months later they're going, that's not what I would love. Here's what I would really love. But if they never would have got here if they didn't start here.
Right, which is so important, I find, because it's just chasing that tail, or whatever the analogy is if you don't actually start, you never really, you're just going in circles. You'll never actually get to where it could be a bit better and relieving it of stress. So let's say somebody does know exactly what their vision is, and they feel that they've decided, and then they're working towards it. What, is there like a shelf life to this vision, or is there things that people do that actually begin to work against them towards their vision? I think what I'm asking is there some things that you can identify that are self-sabotaging in terms of, preventing you from getting to that vision, and what do you do, or what would you suggest to people to overcome some of those classic self-sabotaging moments that I'm sure we're all too familiar with?
Yeah, we all do it, self-sabotage. So it's like we take 3 steps forward and 1 step back, or we've got this momentum, or 3 steps backwards. We get this momentum, and then all of a sudden, a few months later, we've just stopped. And we can't, if you've started out ever a workout regime, and a few months later, you're not doing that anymore. So the things that cause us to self-sabotage is each one of us, we have this part of us inside of us that just wants to keep us in our status quo. because it's very comfortable there. Even if you're not happy, it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's familiar.
Yeah. So as you start to stretch and grow and move towards, there's a part of you that wakes up and says, whoa, wait a second, we're pretty comfortable here. And that's where the self-sabotage can happen, and it can be tricky. So one of the ways the self-sabotage happens is it delays us. It says, yeah, well, we're going to do that. That's a great idea. But we've got to get all these other things first. We'll get started in a couple months. I'll start on Monday. How many of you have ever said, I'll start on Monday?
Yeah. Or when this is over, then I'll do it.
Yeah. So we delay it and we put it out there, and all of a sudden 3 months goes by, 6 months goes by, and we haven't done it yet. So how do we overcome the self-sabotage? Well, first of all, the structure of support. So that's where coaching, mentoring, having an accountability system is so important, because it keeps us focused on the goal, why that was important to us, and keeps us moving forward.
Just as a personal example, I've been working with Stacey, and it's been very helpful, and it is true. For decades, I have read, I don't know how many self-help books with this genre, with this speaking of, thinking about what you want and all these things, and it just never really worked when left to my own accord, because something always got in the way, or it just wasn't quite quick enough or diligent enough about catching some of those reframes in the mind. So it really is, in the beginning especially, and then long term, it's very important to kind of, because it's so easy to slip back into an old habit, and it's like a precipice. You get to this point and it can teeter. So I'm very thankful that there's this constant reminder of where I'm going, why I'm going there, and tools that I can use in the week, in a day. So
It's so important.
And I find that it is that vision. It's at least making a travel card version or something, thinking about it.
So starting with the vision, that's number one. And sometimes we just can't even draw that out of ourselves. And so sometimes it's even having an outside perspective to help identify what your strengths are, and to really ask those questions to pull it from us.
So when someone's designing a vision, is it just simply like work goals, or is it a relationship goal, or is there a way that you chunk a vision out? Yeah,
great question. I believe in full spectrum success. I think usually we're more focused on one or two areas, but what I find is, we have one life, first of all, and so I do work in 4 quadrants: health, relationships, career, and time and money freedom. And so I really encourage my clients and people I work with to have a full spectrum vision in each of those areas, and then usually we are more focused on moving one of those forward. But really important, we don't just want to be successful in our careers, we also want to have those deep relationships in our life.
Correct, nice and balanced. So have you ever worked with a client that just simply couldn't develop one of those quadrants, and what would you do in that case?
There's always, I say start with the quadrant that's easiest. Sometimes we want to go and jump into the one that we're struggling with the most, and health is usually the easiest because we all want vibrant health, right?
Chiropractic is a great tool.
Absolutely. And so start with an area that's easier, and what that does is it builds the momentum to make the other areas, to help that flow. And the other thing I always encourage people to do is to start with what you do know. Sometimes we're, I don't know. Well, when we're in the I don't know, we attract more confusion and not knowing. So start with what you do know. If it's struggling with your career, do you want to work on your own? Do you want to work with a group of people? What does that look like?
That's right. I heard a phrase from another speaker, that start with what you know and let what you know grow.
Yes, exactly. It builds that momentum again.
That's right. You can just keep building it up. And how long have you been doing this now?
I have been mentoring entrepreneurs for over 18 years, specifically inside my own business as a certified life coach for over 3.5.
Great. So that's a fairly long time. Do you have a favorite success story? Or one that sticks out for you the most in your mind? I think that's relatable when people are like, that's me, that was me. And then they can hook onto that it can change.
Absolutely. There's so many. My favorite part about what I get to do is when I get the texts and the phone calls and the emails. Guess what just happened? And you've had some of those incredible success stories too.
Yeah, it's maybe for people, it's not, the success is in those little steps. I always equate it to a fable of the tortoise and the hare, and I think people want to be the hare, and they just want to win the race as fast as possible, but the hare never won. It was the tortoise. Methodically, step by step, forward, and sometimes we don't look back at those, tortoise steps that we took towards the finish line, but he won. He won, and I think that's where those little texts come in. Is just like, oh, I did it. I finally picked up the phone. 3 months not doing that,
and what that creates, right? So clients who
tortoise momentum,
grown their businesses exponentially. I have clients who, after decades of being alone, are now married and have found those relationships. So clients who were sitting behind a desk miserable in their careers for decades, who are now launched their business and living their passion and taken the dream trips. There's just so many wonderful stories, but it starts with asking that question, what would I love? And just really building it and working towards it, and that accountability partner. Yeah, it has worked tremendously for me. I am it's the vision, and making decisions from the vision is, I think, maybe one of the most significant differences that I notice when I'm getting a little stuck, is not to get stuck in a circumstance story, but make a decision to move forward from a point of view of my vision. Great.
So that is great. And how this actually concludes, or with chiropractic, is that it's important. It's twofold. So it's the mental emotional stresses that people experience do begin to create a stress response within the spine, and that really creates those postural problems, those postural faults, and those hurt. So it's important to address those, because if left, they will continue to kind of ache, and it could lead to early degenerative changes that are unnecessary. So that's where I come in, is to help with the unraveling of that kind of stress response mess that might be coming from the mental emotional factor, and just helping that body brain talk better to each other. And then it becomes more catalytic when you add if this is the one that is stressing me out the most, if mental emotional stresses are stressing me out the most, in order for me to really gain forward, I must address the both. I have to look at my environment and reduce some of those stresses, reduce the mental emotional stresses by creating a purpose and really working towards that. It's true, you have one life, and make it the best. And then it's taking care of some of that stress that's in the spine. When the two are working together, that's when you see this really propelling motion of greater health success. Absolutely. People feel their aches and pains much less when the environment is worked on and when the spine is actually worked on. So here's my call to action for those of you who are watching, is that if you call our office, and the office number is listed on the Facebook page, or text, call or text. Texting is a great tool these days. Advanced Wellness Chiropractic is willing to gift the cost of the initial barrier. Now that's a huge thing for people. Sometimes they don't want to try a new chiropractor because they don't want to pay that initial visit fee. So I'm prepared to waive that if you would like to explore what chiropractic can do for you in the way that I particularly treat. So that is my call to action for you, and feel free to do that within this week and next week. Stacey, do you have something for our listeners?
I would just say, if you are ready to put that vision on paper and really get clear about what it is that you want, I have a 30-minute, it's an audio workbook type exercise. So if you download that, it'll help you get clear about what the vision is, take you through a process to, again, ease the barrier of starting. So if you go to staceyberger.ca, staceyberger.ca/vision, you can download that, give that a try. Great place to start.
Perfect. That sounds really wonderful. Next week, we are having another Wellness Wheel Wednesday, and our guest for that day is going to be Diane Matthews. She does Reiki. It's a great way to understand if Reiki is a good fit for you, if it's or what Reiki really is. Some people don't even know. So Diane Matthews is going to be next week, and it will start at 1:00 p.m. live. And just in the future, in the fall of 2018, we are actually hosting a Wellness Wheel event. So expert speakers from the 7 spheres of the Wellness Wheel will be presenting material, tips, and pearls of wisdom so that you can begin to reduce the stress from one of those spheres. So look for that on the webpage at drverabazook.com for information on when the date's been set, but it will be fall of 2018, Wellness Wheel project event, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I do believe Stacey will most likely be one of the speakers for that event. So thank you very much, everybody. You guys have a great day, and we'll see you next Wednesday.